Good morning, YouTube. So I've been using the power shelf here for a couple of weeks now. Done a few upgrades. One thing I did right here on all the nickel strips that I used as bus bars, I've added some solid core copper wire and soldered that to both ends of the bus bar to help cut down on the voltage drop. I'm not sure if I ordered the wrong nickel strip or I ordered the right stuff and they sent me the wrong stuff, but I think this ended up being a lot thinner than I thought I was getting. I remember some of Paul Kennett's videos. He uses 2 strips on his power shelf, so I only used 1 because I thought I had a thicker strip. But anyway, this copper wire seems to cut the voltage drop about in third. I think it went from around 40 millivolts down to about 15 millivolts, which is a lot more reasonable. I probably could have taken everything apart and soldered some more layers of nickel strip on the bottom, but this was pretty easy to do and I didn't have to tear everything apart. I should have doubled those up at least, or at least I should have checked them before I soldered everything together. I just started cutting and soldering when I got those parts. The other thing I've done here is I think I had this before. I use 8-gauge stranded wire here on the charging output, and then down here I have an XT60 plug, and then on this end of the plug here I used to use 14-gauge wire here, and I went to 10-gauge, and this is a twin lead cable, which just makes it a lot easier to move it around. It's a lot more flexible. This 8-gauge is pretty stiff here. You can see it just barely bends, so I didn't want to go 8-gauge all the way down. But the reason for doing that is up here you can see I'm doing actually now a discharge, but I don't have anything plugged into my balance board. And what I found was if I was doing a 1S charge or discharge like I'm doing now with the balance cable hooked up, I was getting funny results. Yeah, sometimes the balance voltage readings were high, sometimes they were low. It was just really unpredictable. If I hook up 2, 3, or 4S, everything's fine. It was just that 1S connection just didn't seem to be very reliable. So I found I got more consistent results if I did not use the balance cable for 1S testing. I'll cut in a clip here, show you the test results before and after. So this is the spreadsheet I've been using to track the recovered 18650 cells I've been processing. And on this second sheet here is my pivot table where I group the 10 pairs of cells that I've assigned to each pack. So I showed you this in an earlier video. So here's the packs that I've set up so far, and then in this column F I have the projected capacities just by summing up the total of the 10 pair of cell capacities. This number again was measured at nominally 4.1 volts. Also, these numbers were tested last summer and fall when it was relatively warm outside. So once I built the power shelf, I populated the cell holders with the first 8 packs, since I have 8 sets of cell holders, and I started doing some capacity testing on the 10 pairs of cells in each group. And I was using 3 amps. This was again outside, but now I was testing in the winter, so this was like December and January. So it was probably between 0 and 10 C outside when I was doing these. I was typically running the discharge tests overnight, and I was pumping the regenerative discharge current back into my lead acid battery bank. So I was getting numbers between 28.1 up to 31.3 amp hours here. So now, then I moved over to this column J here. This was when I moved the power shelf inside, and I've been using the first 4 packs, 1 through 4, in a 4S configuration to power the iCharger, and I showed you that in an earlier video. And so I was trying to then repeat those 3 amp tests inside to see if temperature made a difference, and I think it did. 28.1 went up to 30.6, 30.1 went up to 31.4, and then I guess I had never tested pack 8 outside, but I got 31.1 on it. But then I noticed that my balance cable voltages were, something was up with them. Sometimes it would read properly, sometimes it would read high, sometimes it would read low. So that's when I upgraded the charging cable off of the charger, and I added those jumper wires across the battery holders. And so I thought I would try charging without the balance cable, and I noticed I got a lot more milliamp hours into the battery packs than I was before. And if you put more in, you can take more out. And so here at 3 amps discharge, I went from 30.9 up to 33.2, or 32.5, 32.9. Just for a test, I did a back-to-back cycle, charge and discharge. The first cycle I got 32,905, and then without touching anything, I just repeated that test, 32,886. So I got within 20 milliamp hours of the capacity, which is pretty good repeatability. So I have pretty good confidence in these 3 amp numbers. So now what I'm trying to do is see how reliable the measurements are at higher discharge currents. Maybe 5 is what I'm doing now, and I think the charger goes up to 10. One of the things I've been doing is measuring the temperature inside the charger under these various conditions. I know at 10 amps the cooling fan runs, and the idea is I want to try to find like what's the highest current I can run without making the charger work too hard. The 3 amp is actually fairly good. What I do is I do the charge cycle overnight. Start about 8 o'clock at night and it finishes about 8 the next morning, and then I can do the discharge during the day, and I can record that discharge cycle here in log view. So here's my 5 amp discharge current in green. The blue is the voltage of my 4S pack. It's rising. And then the red is the voltage of the 1S pack that I'm discharging. And you can see here the purple is the charger temperature. It's getting up close to 35°C. I'm trying to get a good repeatable test that I can run and then have confidence in the numbers. So like this pair of test results here tells me I'm probably doing something right here. I'm getting consistent numbers, and all of these numbers are pretty consistent. Not quite as close as the predicted numbers. They were all within 300 milliamp hours. Here I'm off by about 1200. So my plan moving forward is to find whatever test conditions that I decide are the most repeatable, and then I'll run all 10 packs, those test conditions. So I guess my thought is I want to try to pick the capacity that I can reach pretty reliably, because it's easy to take a higher capacity pack and bring that down than it is to take a low capacity pack and bring it up.
I've already used my best cells, like I've already used a 4600, a 4200. At the very end, I've only got 3500s left. But I could take a 4600 out and put a 3500 in and lower the capacity of, say, this pack by 1100 milliamp hours. So I'll show you some of the other testing I'm doing at the same time. I'm measuring the capacity, but I'm also doing some testing on these 4 packs here. So I'll show you that in an upcoming video, so stay tuned for that. And if you have any comments or questions, post that up in the comment section down below the video description here. And as always, thanks for watching.